This project is joint with Robert Clark, also at North Carolina State University, and we got started working on this project. Bob and I have been working for the past 3 years on a project that looks at financial literacy and financial education that's provided to workers as they're about to retire. And the number one write-in comment that we've gotten on our surveys is, why didn't you tell us this information sooner? Which is very frustrating to the employer partners that we've worked with, because they said, we tried and we did tell you. So we became interested in looking at other times when employers are providing information to workers and what seems to be effective, and why don't workers remember that they got this information. And the most important time that employers are providing information to to workers is when they're newly hired. And so what we look at in this project is participation in optional retirement savings plans. And we look at both the information that is provided to new workers when they're hired and over the first few years, and also aspects of plan structure that seem to be important in determining who's participating and the participation levels. So in the first year of the project, we focused on developing a baseline. We've partnered with 6 large national employers, and I'll go through the list in a moment. And we reviewed what they're currently doing, both their plan structure and what types of information that they're providing. And then we gathered some data on all workers that were hired in 2008 and 2009 to see who's participating in these optional retirement savings programs. So I'll just briefly go through each of the 6 employers that we've partnered with. The first is BB&T, which is a very large employer. They have a 100% match on the first 6% of contributions in their optional defined contribution plan, and the match begins after 1 year of service. At the same time, after approximately 1 year of service, individuals are meet with their managers, and at that meeting, managers are instructed to discuss retirement benefits with the employee and encourage participation if the employee is not currently participating. And so what we'll see when we look at the data is that after about 1 year of service, there's a small tick up in participation, which could be due either to the plan structure or to this additional information that's provided. The second employer partner is Progress Energy. What's particularly interesting about Progress Energy is that this past spring, they implemented a new program for their newly hired workers. Their orientations were traditional seminar-based orientations, and now they've gone to a entirely online orientation process that begins before the worker is hired. So we're hoping in future years that we'll be able to see how this different type of information, this new technology where people can spend some time looking through these options and reading on their own at home, if that has an effect on participation in the optional retirement savings plans. Our third employer partner, Pepsi Bottling Ventures, is unique along two dimensions. First, they have an auto-enroll program, which was recently implemented. The auto-enrollment starts after 60 days of employment, but the match doesn't begin until 1 year of service. And so we'll see that although the match, the big incentive, happens a year later, most people just respond to the default of being automatically enrolled. The other aspect of Pepsi Bottling Ventures that's different is that they don't have a defined benefit retirement savings plan as well. They only have this defined contribution plan. And so we'll see that participation is also higher, probably because of that. Martin Marietta Materials, our fourth employer, also is an automatic enrollment company. You'll notice that the match is 50% on the first 7%, but what Martin Marietta does when they automatically enroll individuals is to start them at 2% and then to automatically increase that contribution by 1% every year. And what we notice when we look at Martin Marietta's contribution levels is that most people accept the default and do not take full advantage of the match until after they've been working for enough years to be automatically at the 7%. And so although their contribution rates are very high, we'll see that their average deferral percentage is actually lower than those in the traditional opt-in plans. North Carolina State University is another one of our employer partners. This company or this employer is unique in that it has no match and a very generous defined benefit plan. And although North Carolina State is doing more information interventions than any of our other employers, they're very anxious to get their their participation rates up. They have very low participation rates, most likely because there is no match incentive. And finally, we have our last employer partners is the Williams Company. They have a traditional setup with a nice pension plan and optional defined contribution plan. Their match begins immediately and it's 100% on the first 6%. What is unique about Williams is that over 2008, they experimented on their own with providing different types of information and a lot of information interventions to their employees and found very little change in participation rates. So they're very excited to partner with us and to think about what types of information they could be sending to their employees and how they might be able to improve that process. So as a quick summary, we have 6 employer partners. 2 have opt-out plans, all but 1 offer an employer match, although there's variation in the match amount and in the service requirements, and all but 1 have a defined benefit plan in addition. And so I'll go through some preliminary results that we have. We got collected data on all newly hired workers at each of these companies in 2008 and 2009, and the data is current as of summer 2010, so these are only workers who stayed on until the summer of 2010. We're able to observe the employee's date of hire, gender, date of birth, and current participation level, and then we have some additional information for some of the employer partners. And so I'll go through 7 preliminary findings that we have just from this first year of data. The first is that employers are providing extensive information at orientation. Many of them are providing booklets and a lot of detail, but further efforts to reach workers are mostly ad hoc. Employees, we find, are very responsive to match incentives. So at 2 of our standard opt-in employers, Williams and Progress Energy, we can see that the bulk of people who are contributing just at exactly the employer match of 6%. Our third finding is that when the match begins is an important moment for employers to reach out to employees, because we do see that participation can increase at that time. So in this next 2 charts, BB&T on the top right has the match begin after 365 days, whereas Williams, the match begins immediately. And we can see that the pattern of sign-up is actually quite a bit different at these 2 employers. At Williams, most of the sign-up occurs within the first 30 days of hire. And at BB&T, this is much slower, and then we see an additional tick up after 1 year. And again, this could be either due to the match or to the information that's provided at the annual reviews. Thank you. Our fourth research finding is, not surprisingly, as we know, auto-enrollment plans do increase retirement savings plan participation. So the 2 right columns, or the 2 right employers here, Martin Marietta and Pepsi Bottling Venture, those are our employers that do use the automatic enrollment. We see participation rates around 95% for those employers. The 3 in the middle, BB&T, Progress Energy, and Williams, have more moderate participation levels, and we can see the difference between 2008 and 2009, that people are increasingly signing up over time, and then North Carolina State, which does not have a match, not surprisingly has a very low participation rate. Interestingly, although we don't have a very long time series, we are able to observe people who have been employed for 12 quarters, and we see that there's very little decay for employers that are using automatic enrollment over time. So in this graph, or in these 2 charts, we're looking at bar graphs that represent the participation rates of employees by the quarter that they were hired. And so if we expect that over time people are slowly dropping out of these plans, we would see sort of that people who are hired in the first quarter of 2008, for example, would have lower participation rates. But for the most part, we see that people about 5% of employees do drop out, but that is pretty constant and does not change. We're not losing further employees as time goes by. This is particularly important because the match rate continues to go up at Martin Marietta, and we see that that does not appear to be affecting behavior. So once you're in, you stay in. The sixth research finding is that, as I said when I was talking about Martin Marietta, there's evidence that persons who are automatically enrolled have lower contribution rates that are set at the default level. So when individuals begin, they're automatically enrolled at the 2% level, and that's increased by 1% every year. And so we can see new hires that started in 2008 are all at the 3% level now. New hires that started in 2009, some of them have been increased already to 3%, the others are staying at 2%, and there's very few participants that are contributing at higher percentages. And just to give you a sense of the implications of this, in the left two columns, I have the auto-enroll employers, and in the right three, I have 3 of the opt-in. And you can see that although the participation rates are high, the second row down shows the average deferral percentage for active participants. It's quite a bit lower at the auto-enroll. And so when we include all of the zeros and just get an average deferral percentage for all employees, this average is lower for the auto-enroll companies relative to the opt-in companies for all except for BB&T. So these defaults seem to really be important. And finally, we confirm what other people found, which is in standard opt-in plans, we see lower enrollment rates for younger and female workers. In the opt-out plans, we don't see this same pattern. We don't see that there's a difference in who is opting out. Although we do have 5% of workers that are leaving, it doesn't appear to be differential along gender and age. And these are just some regression results I'll skip past. So just to summarize the main findings, we do see that employers are responsive to match incentives, that these opt-in defaults have lower participation rates among younger and female workers, and for the auto-enrollment programs, although they do increase retirement savings plan participation, employee contributions tend to stay at these lower default levels, but we do not see any significant differences along age, gender, or salary in participation. And so very briefly, where we're hoping to go with this is in year 2 of the project to start conducting small-scale experiments that will vary the type of information that's provided to individuals to see if we can move people along this participation margin. So we'll conduct a survey of non-participants, find out why they're not participating, and along with this provide some information that is varied in content and timing to see what is effective.
Thank you very much.